Well, talking about taxes now, one group of individuals who feel the brunt of taxes more are the entrepreneurs. They are the ones who feel it. We're discussing Faith Foundation reports on the state of entrepreneurship, and we have a report that shows that Nigeria's entrepreneur index was 0.52 out of 1.2, slightly above the average of 0.5, but lower than the previous year. And we have a whole lot of findings now. For instance, the nano, micro, and small businesses, 55% of them pay taxes, with most paying taxes and levies to state government agencies. And unfortunately, a fraction of that does not get to the government, as Mr. Oyedele noted there. Well, this was also captured in this report. Well, to discuss this are two beautiful women. So, pardon me, it's a women's affair this time around. Denike Adeyemi, she's the executive director of Faith Foundation. Also, Amaka is in green. Nwokolo, she's the director of the Faith Institute, Faith Institute, joining us this morning. Good to speak to you ladies this morning. Let's own this.
We are.
Let's own this. All right. So we saw PMI drop. It doesn't seem like a good time. The average is supposed to be 50, but we've gone from 59 to 58 right now. So, and of course, the entrepreneurs make up a major part when you talk about private sector contribution to the economy, and your findings shows that we are not looking so good, right?
Yes. So what we do with the annual State of Entrepreneurship reports is to look at the pulse of entrepreneurship and how it impacts entrepreneurship and enterprise development across different segments, particularly nano, micro, small, and medium enterprises. And we do that on the basis of 5 indicators: business performance, skills acquisition, innovation technology, and as you said, perception of opportunities and business environment. And so when you talk about things like just even the macroeconomic environment and things around fiscal policy, monetary policy, you find that MSMEs, who contribute about 50% to the GDP of the economy, are the ones that feel the brunt across the different spaces. And from a year coming from a number of policies, we've talked about even just limited cash availability now. We started with that at the beginning of the year. Foreign exchange, so many things that have happened this year have significantly impacted the way a lot of our small and growing businesses are faring in the country.
Well, when the election, obviously at the beginning of the year, we had a lot of uncertainty because investors weren't sure of how elections would turn out. And I think it's kind of normal, you don't know which way to go. And then when we now had the election, I had President Bola Tinubu as the president. The market rejoiced, to the best of my knowledge. At least I followed the equities and saw that because he's perceived to be a pro-market individual, that goodies will be coming. Can we say, in his about 6 months in office, can we say that from your report, the entrepreneurs have also been rejoicing for following the perception that he's a pro-market? Adinke, please.
So I will talk about the index of perception of opportunities that we looked at. It still remains the highest indicator when Nigerians feel that there's still a lot of prime opportunity to grow and generate revenue and sustain yourself on the path of entrepreneurship, despite the challenge. But what we saw was that the perception of opportunities, even though it ranked the highest this year, had dropped from between last year and this year. So yes, it was the highest indicator in our state of entrepreneurship, but it was lower than what it was last year. Even with the new president coming in, you can still take away the impact of even the election. During the election cycle, there's limited engagement, limited economic activities. Business tend to slow down, except you're doing a business that's directly related to the election process. You will be challenged. And that was also against the backdrop of all the things that had also happened at the point in time. But we need to make sure, and I think the message for the government is riding on that optimism that entrepreneurs and Nigerians still have, that we find that this land is a land of potential economic growth, and how do we make sure that there are policies that help to enhance the entrepreneurial potential of Nigerians.
So that anticipation is still on?
Oh, it is there. It is there.
All right. So let me come to Amaka now. Talk about, you said your report shows that in Nigeria, 55% of nano, micro, and small businesses surveyed noted that they pay taxes, with most paying taxes and levies to state governments and agencies. And you also noted somewhere some does not get to the government. I think that was supported by Mr. Oyedele. What harm does this bring? Because if I pay tax, which I do, I expect to get some benefits from it. And these businesses, they use infrastructure every day. So, I mean, if they don't get the benefits because either the funds do not get to the government or the government is not paying attention, especially the nano businesses, then tomorrow or next year, I'm discouraged from paying taxes. And so I find a shortcut.
Absolutely. When we think of the multi-taxation process or situation in Nigeria, it's really one that is dire and needs urgent attention to try to sieve through what the issues are and streamline the multiple taxes that exist so that it's easier for businesses to comply. What we found with our report is that, and if people have the report, you can download it at www.faithfoundations.com/research. Once you download that report, on page 24 of the tax report, it literally lists an array of taxes that nano, micro, and small businesses are supposed to pay, and it's a lot. And so what the report and what we advocate for and recommend is that there needs to be some form of streamlining for that to happen. And when that happens, then it's easier for people to comply, and both parties benefit, right? The government is able to have that revenue come in, and then hopefully they can channel it so that we see impact within the space. One of the things we asked in the report was if businesses were willing to pay more taxes. And we were very specific with asking that question because sometimes people assume that businesses don't want to comply and that they're just trying to cut corners. But that's not the case. It's just that the process and the system is cumbersome and just not straightforward, very unclear. For example, people don't even know the number of taxes that they're supposed to pay. And so if I don't know what to pay and I have multiple people representing the government or coming in the name of the government to collect money from me, and I'm paying all these multiple people, at the end of the day, you run me out of business and then we both lose, right? And so back to the question around if people are willing to pay, we found that 73% of the businesses we surveyed indicated that they were interested in paying as long as there was accountability and the government was able to channel funds raised to specific areas like healthcare, like infrastructure, like education. And so on the whole, when we look at the system, look at the situation, the recommendation is, first off, let's identify what the taxes are, let's streamline them, let's create a process that's easy for people to comply. And in that way, you'll find that we're even able to expand the tax bracket, have more businesses come into the formal sector, government wins, MSMEs win.
It doesn't look like that's easy because we've been having this conversation for many, many years.
Yes.
The issue of multiple taxation and, you know, bunching it up and making it kind of easy for businesses to know. I wonder why it seems so difficult. I remember some months ago, FIRS, they had come to Lagos and met with the traders because they were trying to, you know, reduce it. And they had, I mean, it was a clash of agencies and government, and that's why you've seen them pull back. You understand? So, I mean, is it, I don't know. I don't know how we can do it, seriously.
No, but I think...
Because we know what we ought to do, but it just doesn't seem like the will is there. The leakages are there, even inside the tax system, the tax collection system, the tax payment. I mean, there are leakages. There are some individuals who claim to come from the government, and you know, businesses are paying for these things.
Correct. I think that what's happening now signifies some hope, right? Because presently, and for the first time in a long time, we find that this government, you know, has actually set up a committee that's looking specifically at this issue, right? And they have that purview, including taxes for NMSMEs. And so that in a way signifies some hope. And what's also happening is they are also the committee, and thankfully we've also been able to, contribute, provide some form of input on behalf of small businesses to say these are the issues. And what that committee is doing is carrying out thorough research to understand what's happening within the space, so that on the back of that they can prefer recommendations and begin to implement.
We need timeline. We need timeline.
Yes,
we don't have forever.
There have even been timelines, because
Exactly.
you referenced Mr. Taiwo Oyedele. He was at our Policy Dialogue series 2 weeks ago, and one of the things that they've done was they've even done like an initial report on immediate things that they're going to do. And part of their proposals is creating a single revenue window that you can see all the taxes. And if they're able to get their work done, according to him, they will get to a point where there is there's a single digit number of taxes that, particularly for micro and small businesses, will be required to pay. There's transparency about what you're required to pay. There's also an understanding around that multi-layered level, particularly at the state and local levels, to say how do we take away non-state actors? How do we digitize the process to ensure there's transparency and ease? So, everybody knows where to point to and who to point to with that. And we have to encourage the engagement process. So yesterday they engaged MSMEs, and I agree with you. Yes, they've done this engagement again, but we cannot but support, and let's see. At least there's that presidential commitment now to seeing that, and they understand that it's a multi-layered issue that has to be addressed and taken into consideration.
And I'm sure Mr. Oyedele knows, he knows first, and at least we've had a lot of conversation with him, what impact this is having on businesses, on entrepreneurs, and generally the economy.
Yes,
absolutely. At the end of
because
the day.
It has to be a win-win, like Amaka said. If we're able to expand the tax net and get more people to pay less taxes, you'll probably have more revenue. And at a time that we are in this country, we need that. So
we really need that. To borrow less, that would be good news. Thank you so much, ladies. Adenika Adeyemi, Executive Director of Faith Foundation, Amaka Nwokolo, Director of Faith Institute. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Amy.
For your time.
Thank you.